solve by completing the square. So this is another method of solving quadratics. Don't make this method a choice of yours. It's a little bit harder than the other ones, but there are times where you have to complete the square. For instance, if you want to change a quadratic equation in the general form into the vertex form to graph a parabola. But here, I wouldn't choose to do completing the square, but sometimes we'll ask you that solve it by completing the square, and then you don't have a choice, I guess. X squared minus 6x minus 7 to solve by completing the square. The first thing you need to do is move this negative 7 to the other side. So we have x squared minus 6x equals 7. You notice I left a little bit of space here because I want to complete the square to make this a perfect square trinomial, this part right here. So to do that, you take the coefficient of x, which is negative 6, divide it by 2, and square it. And that will give me 9. So I have to add a 9 here. And whatever you do to the left side of the equation, you have to do to the right side of the equation to keep the balance, because otherwise you change the balance of this equation. Now, once you do this and complete the square on this side, this factors into x, and then the negative sign after the x squared, that's what you put there, and then square root of the number that you added, which is 3, and you throw a square on top. And then on this side here, you have 7 plus 9 is 16. And now we come to the square root property where we square root both sides. So we square root this, just gives me x minus 3. And if we square root the 16, it's going to give me 4, but we don't forget to write plus or minus 4. So basically, I'm saying square root both sides after completing the square. And therefore, now we'll move the negative 3 to the other side. And when you move the 3 to the other side, it becomes positive. And you have plus or minus 4. And therefore, x equals 3 minus 4 is negative 1. And 3 plus 4 is 7. These are the answers for that. The second one, it's different from the first one, is that we have a leading coefficient here in front of the x squared. We cannot complete the square unless we get rid of this 2. So to get rid of this 2 in front of here, because you have two sides on the equal sign, left side and the right side of the equal sign, then you're able to divide everything by 2. So divide this by 2, divide this by 2, and divide this by 2. So we have x squared plus 8x equals negative 7. To complete the square now, we're at this stage right here. And what I'll do, I'll just change my colors here. So I added. So I take the 8, the coefficient of x, divide it by 2 and square it. And that will give me 16. So I add a 16 to this side, and I add a 16 to this side. Now, when you do that, this is a perfect square trinomial. So to factor it, you just put an x, and the sign after the x squared is plus, and the square root of the number that you added is 4, and throw a square on top. And negative 7 plus 16, that gives us 9. Now at this stage here, you want to square root both sides to get rid of the square on top of here. So you get x plus 4 equals, and don't forget the plus or minus, plus or minus 3, oops, plus or minus 3, and therefore you move the 4 to the side, becomes x equals negative 4 plus or minus 3, and therefore the answer will be x equals negative 4 minus 3 is negative 7, and negative 4 plus 3 is negative 1, and that's done. Now we come to this. This is a little bit harder because you have to deal with fractions. So the same thing, because we have a negative 2 here, as we did with the negative 7 here, we have to move it to the other side. So we have 2x squared plus x equals 2. Now, if we want to complete the square, we cannot have a leading coefficient here, so we have to divide everything by 2, this by 2, this by 2, and this by 2 right here. So we end up with x squared plus, there's a 1 in front of here, so I'm just going to write this as 1/2 x equals 1. Now you take the coefficient of x if you want to complete the square, which is the 1/2, and I'm going to do that in blue again. 1/2 and divide it by 2 and square it. This will give you 1/4, and 1/4 squared will be 1/16. If you want to see how it's done, it's -2 divided by 2, which is 2/1. Now, if you change that to multiplication, 1/2 times 1/2, which gives you 1/4, and then you square the whole thing. 1 squared is 1, and 4 squared is 16. So if you just want to see how it's done, that's how it's done. I'm just going to erase this. So therefore, I'm going to add 1/16 to this side, and also whatever I do to the left side, I do to the right side. So 1/16 here. This, when you want to factor it, all you need to do, just put an x. The sign after the x squared is plus the square root of the number that you added. And when you square root a fraction, all you need to do is just square root the top and then square root the bottom, which is 4. You close the bracket and you throw a square in there. And this is 1/1 plus 1/16. So that's 16/16 plus 1/16, which gives me 17/16. At this stage, I'm going to square root both sides to get rid of the square on top of here. So I have x plus 1/4 equals square root of 17. You cannot do it, but you could do the square root of 16, which is 4. Now, when you do that, don't forget to write plus or minus. And therefore, you move the 1/4 to the other side. So x equals -1/4. When you move it to the other side, you change the sign, plus or minus root 17/4. Which gives me, we're just going to write the denominator once since it's common, and it's -1 plus or minus square root of 17. That is completing the square. Thanks for watching. Stay safe.